This is a sketch that I did at the time, which was really just a doodle of the refinery showing the spire-like design. It was just really for personal use to get a kind of a feel of how it would look as an overall design, with the Nostromo right down here at the front, the domes underneath, and then these massive spired pieces going up. These are the pieces which Ridley Scott later knocked off with his hammer and chisel. The Nostromo model weighed, somebody said I heard somebody say a quarter of a ton, but I don't know about a quarter of a ton, but it was incredibly heavy. It needed to be lifted on a forklift truck. So the model had a huge metal framework built inside it, and the Nostromo was plugged into by a forklift truck with a couple of sort of prongs on it, which actually fitted into the side of the model. And the way they achieved the Nostromo being pulled away from the refinery was that the arm itself wasn't actually motorised at all. It ran freely, and it was about 30 feet long. It was a really massive thing, again clad with thousands and thousands, in this case, of Hornby Railway piers. All these crisscross girder pieces. Went into model shops and bought 150 of these kits. And when we told the guy what we were doing with them, I don't think they believed us. And this shot was achieved by the forklift truck being covered in black velvet, plugged into Nostromo, and just driving away from the refinery, dragging the Nostromo with it. And of course, as it pulled the Nostromo away, it dragged the arm with it. So that shot where you see it going out and coming away is just the forklift truck driving away on a nice smooth surface. Originally, the Nostromo had 3 huge arms which opened, but Ridley Scott came up with this idea in an actual conversation where it would be great if a giant hand pushed the Nostromo away. So I did a very, very quick sketch of this and showed it to him, and we needed to detail it really quickly. And we found that the legs of R2-D2 just happened to have this really nice shape, and you can actually see them quite clearly clad on this thing.
I think we had 2 or 3 different scales. We had one that was about 4 feet long, and we had another one which was 12, 14, 15 feet long. And that one was very heavy, and it was cantilevered out with a forklift truck device, so that on a beam which was covered in black velvet. And because of all the dust and stuff that was around, you couldn't see any of the mechanism, because we kept it lined up so the model was in front of it and the camera couldn't see it. And that was pretty difficult. I mean, that took a lot of effort, and lots of wind machines going, and plenty of vermiculite, which is an insulation for roofs and things, being blown around everywhere. Everybody had masks and goggles and everything else on, and earplugs and the lot. And in those days we didn't have radio communications the way you have now, where everybody's got their own little set and they can all join in. I mean, there was lots of shouting and screaming going on, thumping people on the back. Stop.
Nick, could we do that if we start level?
We'd stop and they'd put the light, stick some lights on, etc., and reshoot it. And he kind of created in front of the camera. And although there wasn't always huge logic to it, I just think the landing of the ship had, huge drama. It was very exciting. And I think, Jerry Goldsmith's music and everything worked great at that particular point.
He couldn't be burned off anything he had a passion about, and so we all got fired with the same enthusiasm. It was it was a labour of love. We did as much as we could to increase the production values on each of the shots, and Ridley was the key to us doing that. He pushed and pushed and pushed us all the time.
This is the sketch that I did of the Narcissus shuttlecraft, the original back section here having been built as a set and having been done as a drawing by Ron Cobb, the conceptual artist. I then came up with this idea of what the nose would look like, and it was from this that the final model was constructed. And also just a very, very quick sketch showing the rear section. This was to enable me to work out the release clamp, which I also built, which drops the Narcissus down from the Nostromo and then releases. As it did so, the word purge came up. When I went to see Blade Runner, there's a shot where the car takes off and you see a screen, and there's the clamp arm from Alien on there, which I'd actually designed, and Purge come up. And I thought, that is amazing. I wonder how many people noticed that. We had a shot which required the burial shroud where John Hurt's character Kane has died to be fired out of the Nostromo's hatch. Now, many people would think, oh, there'd be sort of computerised ways of doing this, but not at all. I mentioned Nick Alder, who became the special effects director. We had a very, very large section of Nostromo built, about 40 feet long, which was supposed to be kind of the underside, like a trench on the underside of Nostromo, very reminiscent of the trench in Star Wars. I'm sure there was a crossover there. And what we actually did was I carved, and again I give him a very short period of time to carve Kane's burial shroud in wood, and I made a burial shroud about 8 inches long. And Nick Alder got hold of the fisherman's catapult for firing bait out into the pond where you're fishing. And he just put a flat right down at the end of the studio, and he just pulled the catapult back and fired my little model, and it went down the trench. And of course they filmed it at high speed, so that it came out in slow motion. And he just did this over and over again. And what they did was, of course, it would drop eventually as it flew away, eventually its trajectory, like an arrow, it would drop down. But they cut it before it did that. And I just thought that was just the most amazing piece of simple way to get around a shot. And just seeing him firing this thing with the fisherman's catapult. He then started firing it at people. That's another story. Later, he needed a shot where you saw Ripley right at the end of the film inside the shuttlecraft moving around. So we then had to make a foreshortened version of the shuttlecraft that had a TV monitor inside it. So, had pre-recorded film of a girl, not actually Sigourney Weaver, but her stand-in, running around inside. And that was built into the model of that.
I think the only dodgy thing was always the marriage between matte painting and model and the screen. It's always tricky, very tricky. But you know, even today in CGI, still see the whole flipping matte. And I always like to go for wherever you can, build a model, then photograph it with the light that's on the shot, and then graft it onto it.
CGI has probably, in my personal opinion, as a model maker, it's decimated much of the model making. I don't think myself that CGI will ever completely replace models. I don't care what anybody says. I think you can tell. There was a great deal of fun going on. Some of the people involved in the film. We had Nick Alder, who was basically the special effects director after Brian left. He's a real prankster. I'd worked with him on Space 1999 and know what he was like. So the relationship was actually very good. I got on very well with the guys. I'd worked with them before. With the actual crew itself, it was a very happy relationship that we had, bearing in mind we were working together for, like I've said, about 14 months.
Technology advances, you can think of new ways of doing things. There were lots of things we could have probably enhanced the production value on. We could have done huge moves through the vehicles and things, which we didn't do. But in actual fact, because the script was so beautifully written and so tight, and because Ridley was really clever with the way we didn't see Alien, but we sort of saw the alien and everything else, we were just there to sort of remind people that there was a bit of space outside and they were billions of miles from anywhere. We didn't need to do any more than that. You know, the production values enhanced what was going on in terms of the drama, but it didn't have to be a visual effects extravaganza as such to save a movie. I mean, we just enhanced what was already there, as opposed to other movies, some of recently that have come out, which are visual effects tour de forces, but no story. I mean, the key to this was the amazing story.